Hello, my lovely friends. It's Emma from A Vintage Girl in a Modern World. Now, there are some television programmes that make us laugh, some that keep us on the edge of our seats. And then there are those rare shows that simply make us feel happy. And for me, That Girl has always been one of those shows. And every time I watch it, I find myself smiling within the first few minutes. There's just something so bright, warm and uplifting about it. And it reminds me why I fell in love with classic television in the first place. Now, this isn't going to be an episode-by-episode guide or a history of the series. There are plenty of places you can go if you're looking for every detail about the show's production or its cast. Instead, I simply wanted to spend a little time talking about why I still love That Girl, why it continues to make me smile, why Anne-Marie is such a wonderfully likeable character, and why all these years later, the show still feels every bit as charming as it did when it first appeared on our television screens. And in a world that sometimes can feel a little too fast and a little too serious, That Girl reminds me that life can be full of laughter, hope and endless possibilities. And perhaps that's why I always find myself coming back to it. So you can make yourselves comfortable, grab a lovely cup of tea, and let's spend a little time together talking about one of my favourite classic television shows, That Girl. I think one of the reasons that Girl has always appealed to me is because it feels so wonderfully cheerful. From the moment the opening titles begin, you know you're about to spend half an hour in a world that's full of warmth, laughter and optimism. And everything about that programme feels bright. The colours, the music, the fashion, the apartments. Even the streets in New York somehow feel welcoming. And it's the sort of show that instantly lifts my mood. I also love the pace of it, because it never feels rushed. It gives the characters time to breathe, and that allows you to really enjoy spending time with them. The humour is gentle, the stories are entertaining, and before you know it, you're completely forgotten about everything else for a little while. And I think that's something many of us are looking for today, because life can often feel busy and overwhelming, and sometimes we don't want anything too dramatic. We simply want to switch on the television, relax for a cup of tea, and spend some time in a world that makes us smile. And for me, That Girl does exactly that. It's one of those rare programmes that feels like a little escape from the modern world. And every time I watch it, I'm reminded why I fell in love with classic television in the first place. Of course, a big part of why That Girl works so well is Anne-Marie herself. She's always been one of my favourite television characters, because there's something so genuine about her. She's kind, she's optimistic, she's determined. And even when things don't quite go to plan, she somehow manages to pick herself up with a smile and keep going. And I think that's one of the reasons she's remained so likeable all these years later. Because she feels like someone you could actually be friends with. She's never trying to be perfect. She makes mistakes. She has moments where she doubts herself. She gets herself into all sorts of funny situations. But that's exactly what makes her feel so real. I also love the fact that she follows her dream of becoming an actress. And she doesn't expect success to simply arrive overnight. She works hard, keeps believing in herself, and refuses to give up, even when life throws the occasional obstacle on her way. And I've always found that really inspiring. Anne-Marie showed that it was possible to be ambitious without losing your kindness, to chase your dreams without forgetting who you are, and to remain hopeful even when things don't always go according to plan. And I think that's one of the reasons That Girl feels so refreshing today. Because Anne-Marie isn't just a wonderful sitcom character. She's someone you genuinely want to see succeed. And by the end of each episode, you can't help but be rooting for her all over again. Now, I have to admit, one of the things I probably noticed just as much as the story is the fashion. Because, oh my goodness, I absolutely love Anne-Marie's wardrobe. Every episode seems to feature another beautiful outfit. The elegant dresses, the smart coats, the colourful patterns, the matching hats and handbags. Everything feels so effortlessly stylish. And I've always believed that the fashion from the 1960s had a charm of its own. People seem to take such pride in how they dress. Not because they were trying to impress anyone, but because it was simply part of everyday life. And even the outfits Anne wears for the most ordinary occasions somehow feel special. And whenever I watch that girl, I often find myself thinking, I'd happily wear that. I also love the hairstyles and their little accessories. The scarves, the jewellery, the gloves, the little details that complete each outfit. And of course, I can't help admiring the apartments and interiors too. And if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know I always find myself looking beyond the characters. I'm looking at the furniture, the lamps, the wallpaper, the ornaments. All these little touches that help create such a warm and inviting world. And perhaps that's one of the reasons I enjoy That Girl so much. It's not just a lovely sitcom. It's a wonderful glimpse into a world that still feels incredibly stylish, colourful, and full of charm. The more I've thought about this episode, the more I've realised that part of what I love isn't simply That Girl itself. It's the world the programme represents. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, I don't think the past was perfect. No ever is. But there are certain things about the world of That Girl that I've always found incredibly appealing. And whenever I watch an episode, I find myself imagining what it would be like to wander through those New York streets, calling into a little cafe for a coffee, browsing the shop windows, watching the city bustle around you. There seems to be such a wonderful energy about it. It's busy without feeling overwhelming, exciting without feeling stressful. And I've always loved the sense of optimism that runs through the series. It feels like a world where anything is possible, where every new day brings another opportunity, another adventure, another reason to smile. And perhaps that's one of the reasons I keep coming back to it. Not because I want to live in the past, but because it reminds me of the importance of hope, of chasing your dreams, of finding joy in the little things. A conversation with a friend, a favourite outfit, a walk through the city, a good laugh after a difficult day. And these little moments matter. And somehow, That Girl reminds me to notice them. And I honestly think that's one of the reasons it still feels so special today. Because it doesn't simply entertain us. It reminds us that life can be colourful, hopeful, and full of possibilities, if we take the time to appreciate it. Some people assume that classic television only appeals to the generation who grew up watching it. But I don't believe that's true for a second. In fact, I think That Girl has just as much to offer today as it did when it first appeared on our television screens. Perhaps even more so. Because we live in a world that often feels very busy, very loud, very fast. Everyone seems to be rushing from one thing to the next. Trying to keep up, trying to do everything at once. And somehow That Girl reminds me it's perfectly alright to slow down every now and then. To laugh, to enjoy the little moments, to spend time with people who make us smile. And I also think Anne-Marie as a character still inspires people today. She reminds us that following your dreams isn't always easy. There'll be disappointments, there will be setbacks, but it doesn't mean we should stop believing in ourselves. She faced each new challenge with optimism, kindness and determination. And I honestly think those qualities will never go out of fashion. Whenever I introduce someone to That Girl, I hope they'll discover what I've loved about it for so many years. Not simply a wonderful sitcom, but a programme that's full of warmth, full of charm, and full of heart. Because those are the kind of stories that stay with us, long after the closing credits have rolled. The more I thought about That Girl while putting this episode together, the more I've realised it's so much more than a television sitcom. It's about hope. It's about laughter. It's about following your dreams, even when the journey isn't always easy. And whenever I watch Anne-Marie, I'm reminded that life doesn't have to be perfect to be happy. Sometimes happiness is found in the little things. A good friend, a favourite outfit, a walk through the city, a job that makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning, or simply sitting down at the end of the day to watch a programme that never fails to make you smile. And perhaps that's why I've never fallen out of love with That Girl. Because it still makes me laugh. It still makes me smile. And it still reminds me why I've always loved the vintage world so much. Not because I believe the past was perfect, but because programmes like this celebrate kindness, optimism, and finding joy in everyday life. And I honestly don't think those things will ever go out of fashion. So thank you for spending a little time with me today. I'd love to know in the comments if you're a fan of that girl, and if you are, which episode or moment has always stayed with you. As always, thank you so much for watching, for your kindness and being part of this little vintage community we've created together. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep a little old-fashioned magic in your heart. I'll see you all again very soon.